All right, guys. We're gonna work on the just getting this neck all cleaned up here. So we're gonna work trying to get this whole outline of the neck all cleaned up on the up and down. That'll put us in a great position to start carving the neck on the background and rounding it out. But first, it's a good idea just to get all this edge, all these edges lined up with the fretboard and our peg head overlay. Depending on how much excess you have here, you want to probably approach it in a different way. If you saw, like, after the fact with your bandsaw that you have leftover edges, and you feel comfortable enough, take that back on your bandsaw and make a few more passes and just try and really clean that up as much as possible, because that's really going to cut down on the time it takes to get this in a good position. Another option too, I got a little portable or belt sander. If you don't have a bigger belt sander, like a standalone, you can put this in your vise, use it upside down too, and use that to really like dig into this stuff and go back and forth, getting that down. But just be careful though, when you're using power tools, it cuts in really fast. What I'm going to be using here is like a rasp, and I'm just going to be working this, getting this whole edge level here with this fretboard. And here too, I got a half round rasp too, and I can use that flat side. I'm not going to use that round side. I'll use that flat side and get that down. And then once you get close, you want this to be level or all the same edge. So a good idea, I'll take it out of this vise and I will actually just take a straight edge with the sandpaper, put this on its side, and then smooth that down. So we'll do that side, and we'll do the other side just like this side. So I'll only show you probably one side on this. And then right here, when we're going into our peg head or our headstock here, I'm going to take that on a spindle sander and clean that up, just sort of like exact same process we did with the peg head overlay. So I'll get that down to where we want that, and then I will use a rasp up here, or potentially a sander. There's a little sander like this. I can use that, or around the edge, get that nice curve on the headstock, or you can use an orbital. All good options. Get yourself plenty of like files, fine tooth. These rasps work really good to cut down a lot of this material quick. So I'll just roughly get started here. Just sort of show you what I'm doing. I'm just taking this, just running it along, make a few passes, keep a close eye on this fretboard. You definitely do not want to be going into the fretboard. So as soon as you start seeing this, this excess glue go away, or look at it at the side, find the high spots, take those down. So we want to get this close. We don't need to bring it all the way down, because we can get that with sandpaper. That just really cuts right in. So this is a handy rasp to have in your tools. And I'll give you a little, I'll put this in the notes, what kind of rasp this is. So I'm just working it back and forth, and you can see the glue there that's dried. So I know once I start seeing the glue go away on that fretboard and neck crease there, that I need to stop. So I don't want to damage that fretboard and go too far. sure to do your heel all the way down. Get it to that pencil line. So just as effective as you got this half round rasp, or if you had a flat rasp like this too, you can a little bit more control in this one, a little smaller, and that just brings it right down. All right, so I'm essentially just going to keep going on this edge. I'm not going to make you guys watch it all. But once I get that down to a really good spot where I'm really close to that fretboard, I'm going to take my straight edge with sandpaper. I'm going to take this out of the vise, and I'm going to run this horizontally like that. And that'll get me a nice, solid, straight line to work with. So all right, so I'm gonna flip that camera off and just get this done, and then I'll come back and we'll do this peg head here going into the headstock here on the spindle sander. All right, so I got the edges of my fretboard pretty cleaned up. Not perfect, I know that. You see these little gray spots, that means glue, so you're going to want to come back here either with a fine file, or we can get that with sandpaper. But I'm just trying to jump ahead here to this next step so you guys can see. So right now I'm going to clean these this transition going into the headstock here with my spindle sander. So that's one transition there. We have this fifth pip, this little bump out too that we need to take care of too. So I'm going to use my Dremel tool again because I use that for the fingerboard. If you have a really small diameter spindle sander, you can do that as well. Just be careful. Use your fingerboard bump out as a guide. So I'm essentially just going to go in this and work my way in there. And as I'm doing that, it's going to create an angle right here where this cuts in at the edge of the semicircle. And I just want to make sure that's straight up and down. I don't want that to lean, that way or that way. So just do a couple, go on there a second and see how it's sanding. And you might have to adjust your neck up or down to get that just right. I didn't clean up the peg head or around this overlay yet, but I'll do that after this. My head might get in the shot here as I go over, but just so you know. Show you guys what it's creating here. So you can see it's starting to carve this out here. There's some weird, when we cut that on the bandsaw earlier, some cuts in there, but as this goes down it's at a little bit of an angle. So how I want to get rid of that or correct that is I would tilt this in a little bit to get rid of that. So I'll show you that. Let's take a quick look. So you can see those lines are starting to come out. I got this angle here, it's starting to do this sort of curvature. Not too far off though. That's just a matter of me doing this and not keeping it steady. So essentially I could just hold that on there and that'll straighten that out. Alright, so real close there. And this line's looking pretty good too. I think I'm going to stop there. Just be careful when you're digging into this. You don't want to go too far into your semicircle here and you're cutting in. Remember, you're trying to line up your fretboard, making a smooth transition from that fretboard into this peg head overlay. So those lines should look pretty fluid. So I'm going to do that, leave that for now. We'll get this with like a half round fine tooth file and some sandpaper and get to work on that transition. And that way we can fine tune it versus, you know, working with power tools and take off too much. So I'll do the same for the other side. And then I'll start working on this peg head overlay. Getting this excess off, which I'll do the same thing as I did before with my fingerboard with the rasp. So I'll do that, and then I'll show you how to do this fifth string bump out here. All right, so I got the most of the perimeter all pretty cleaned up good. One thing to know here too, when I was doing this pig head overlay, headstock angles here, just hold it up every now and then and just eye it up and see how it looks for symmetry. It helps if you can draw a line and try and measure the distance from when it's hitting on both sides. Like just me looking at mine right now, I can see one of my angles is more abrupt than the other, so it's just a fine tuning and going back in there with the spindle sander and sandpaper and getting that really cleaned up really good. So take your time on that. So for the fifth string bump out here, we have excess wood underneath. And I was saying earlier, if you had your spindle sander with a small enough diameter, you could take this wood off here underneath, because we already did the fretboard. I did my fretboard with my Dremel tool with a little drum sander, and I'm essentially going to do the same thing. I'm just going to follow this down, making sure I don't go too far into the wood, but we want to get it somewhat close, and then we can always clean it up with sandpaper. I'm just going to go ahead and do this. My head's probably going to be in the shot when I'm doing this, because I'm really going to be looking close at this, so I'll try and pull back every now and then so you can see. Just make sure you're doing the full up and down so you don't create a ledge. Alright, so that's essentially what I'm going to do. I'm going to swap my drum out here. It's starting to burn the wood a little bit. So I'm going to change this out and then go right over it again. But that's essentially what you're going to be doing if you're going to be using your Dremel with your drum sander. Just make sure you go the full depth, up and down. Don't create a ledge so it sticks. I just want it to be all one. Make sure that line is straight up and down too, with that bump out. It's not going one way or the other. So take your time on that. That's about it. So we got our fretboard cleaned up really well. It doesn't have to be perfect. We can go back over here and we can sand this, get it clean when we're all done here. So after this, before I go into the carving of the neck, which is the back of the neck, I'm going to start doing inlay work. And I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but I think at this point of the build, I feel comfortable with doing the inlay. One thing is, at this point, I have a nice even neck to work with, so it's steady. I can put this on the workbench. I don't have to put it in a vise. And I can be doing my fretboard inlay with not too much worry about this. So we're going to take a tangent, go off a tangent here, and we're going to be doing some fretboard inlay, putting some fret markers. I'll do a star on the 5th fret. We'll show you how to lay out the lines and how to get everything lined up correctly. And then from there, I will do a peg head overlay. So I'll be doing my Minnesota symbol here on the headstock. So I'll show you how to cut pearl with a jeweler saw. My little setup for that. So that's the next step. So hopefully you're this far or gotten this far, or everything's looking good. It's starting to look like a solid neck here, and I think right when you start carving this down and you got the nice roundness to it, you got the inlay in, that's when it's really all coming together. So we're going to try and get to that point. And then we'll be moving on to our rim at that point, and then we'll be coming back to our neck and fine tuning, putting the dowel stick in and all that. So that's about where we're at. So if you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks.